And so I watched him as he talked, and then the journalist asked him, "Would you do it, Mr. Disney? Would you do a little of the voice?" And he went, "Oh boy!" And I watched what he did with his body. I watched what he did with his face. I thought, "Oh gosh, maybe I could do that."
Welcome to Story and Craft. Now, here's your host, Mark Preston.
All right, here we go, back again. Welcome. Thank you so much for stopping back by. If this is your first episode, welcome. My name is Mark Preston, and today we are sitting down with actor Chris Diamantopoulos. You might know him from movies like George Clooney's The Boys in the Boat. He was also the bad guy in Red Notice with Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson. He's been in the Three Stooges. Heck, he's even been the voice of Mickey Mouse. And of course, we talk about that, as well as his new show, The Sticky. He co-stars with Margo Martindale. It is on Prime Video. Watched a few episodes over the weekend. Very cool show. Chris is such a talented guy, both on stage and with TV, film, also voiceover. He's done tons of animation. He is a great chat, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Hey, by the way, if you would do me a favor, pop on over to storyandcraftpod.com/rate. Hey, do me a favor, drop a review, if you will, on your favorite podcast app. It helps folks to find the show. So, leave some stars, a review, but make sure to follow the show. That way you get notified every time there is a new episode. And of course, the website, we got everything up there from past episodes to all of our guests. You want to find out more about them. And it's just a cool way to reach out. Drop me a note. You can even leave me a voicemail. So let's go and jump right on into it. I really enjoyed this chat. Very talented actor. Today is Chris Diamantopoulos Day, right here on Story and Craft. Hey man, so good to connect with you. I just watched you the other night. I was watching Red Notice.
Oh.
Love your character. You had this sexy Euro Forrest Whitaker thing going on, which I just like that sound. Yeah, I love that.
You know where that voice comes from, actually. It's the ultimate... This is a great actor's story. When I auditioned for the role, the character was... Okay, so originally the character was supposed to be Antonio Banderas, but something happened from a budgetary and schedule standpoint, and he couldn't do it. So when the audition came in, they wanted a Spanish or a Latin American bad guy. And I didn't feel comfortable...
They wanted Puss in Boots.
Well, I didn't feel comfortable doing that only because I knew that there are great Latin actors out there, and for me to go in and impersonate that just didn't feel right. So I am Greek. I speak Greek fluently. It's my first language. So I went in and I made him Greek. And I changed all of the Spanish stuff to Greek. And director loved it. Ross and Marshall Thurber absolutely loved it. And so when I got the role, he was like, look, let's make this guy kind of portly, and he'll make him kind of a bloated Greek billionaire. And I loved that idea. And then about 2 weeks in, before production started, I got a call from him saying, flag on the play. And I think we're going to have to find another actor. And I said, why? He said, well, Ryan just did a movie, and the main bad guy in his movie was a portly Greek guy. And when we went through the script recently and he just saw that change, he said, it's just too close to something I did. So he said, I'm really sorry, Chris, we're going to have to find someone else. I said, no. I was actually going to call you because I thought, the bloated Greek billionaire, that's been done a million times. Let's make this guy a viper. Let's make him of... he said, yeah, but where is he from? What's his voice? I said, well, he's of indeterminate European origin. No one knows. He just popped on Interpol when he was 18. He goes, what does he sound like? I said, well, his vocal cords were paralyzed because his father tried to strangle him when he was a boy.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And so it was me trying to save my job and finding a way to make a non-specific European voice that created that. So necessity breeds invention, Mark.
Well, the other thing is I kind of dislike you because we're about the same age. I think I got like 1 or 2 years older. I was born in 73.
Okay, 75.
But, you're in way too good of shape. You're like, I gotta get to the gym, man. I'm like, you're sort of like the totem of where I'm trying to get to right now. Both in.
You're there, man. You look good to me. You look very good to me. You eat well. You exercise.
It's funny. My youngest went off to college, so
Wow.
now an empty nester,
Yep.
and I moved down to a little island in South Texas called South Padre.
Oh.
I'm kind of going for the Jimmy Buffett lifestyle.
I love it.
And one of the reasons why I moved down here is to be more active, literally walks on the beach every day. And I think that's really kind of where I'm trying to get back to, is just walking more and then easing into it. And my kids are in way better shape. They're all like, they're more athletic than me. So
how many kids?
I was talking to my cousin. How
many kids?
I'm sorry. I got 3. I got a 21-year-old daughter who's about to graduate from Loyola in New Orleans. Wow. Going to be a teacher. My son's there, and I think he's moving and want to be a psychologist. And my baby diva, my 18-year-old daughter, Emma, is going to small university in Boca Raton. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, God, she's going to be 19 in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
What am I thinking? I'm staying the same age. They keep getting older.
I know.
I kind of feel like
exactly
a reverse.
yeah. Yeah.
But no, I really enjoyed it. And that's one of the things. To me, you are. I don't like to use the phrase chameleon. I don't think that's. But you really have a nice. To say you have range would be a gross understatement.
That's nice of
Going
you to
from
say.
Three Stooges to that. Was that is that like a Neumann you got there?
It's a Neumann. Yeah.
Okay,
So I have a Neumann. I also have a Sennheiser 416 next to it. Just depends on what I'm recording. I like the Neumann because, and I've got it on this sort of Omni so that if I'm moving around or whatever.
that's the same thing. I got in my booth. Actually, I've got a booth right here. I got a 416 because I do mostly promo. And actually, it's funny because I know
Yeah.
I saw you were in the Kennedys. You played Sinatra, and I was actually the voice of Reels channel at the time, and that was like a really big deal for the
Mm,
network. It kind of put them
it was.
over the
That was a
edge.
big show for them.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
You have a great promo voice. I did promo all through, I mean, basically from 2001 to 2008. I did a ton of promo in New York City. That was my
Really,
bread and butter.
during COVID, were you doing a lot of the animation from home? When you couldn't go in, or did you have that set up and kind of a
Yeah.
screen?
So yeah, I did a lot of animation before COVID. We lived, I started doing animation quite regularly in about 2004 is when it really sort of began for me. And I lived between New York and LA, and between 2004 and 2020, you really weren't doing stuff from home booth, even if you
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
studio. You were always going into studio.
Yeah, because the
And
producers
when
were
we
all of a little bit different generation. They were still used to wanting to see
totally.
you.
That's right. They wanted you. They wanted you there, which was great. There was a great sense of community. I was living in New York, and I had a few animated series going at the time. And COVID hit, and I didn't have a booth in my apartment in New York City, and I lost a bunch of work because they needed to pivot to a way where they had talent that had studio space. So we moved, not for this reason, but we moved back to Los Angeles, and one of the first things that I did was I took the risk of building a proper studio. I have
Oh,
a
really?
proper studio. Oh yeah.
Well, you,
I,
you
I
didn't you didn't get a pre-made booth. You actually kind of retrofitted a space in your home.
I took an actual building, and it was, I guess, I don't know, a guest house or something, but I turned the whole thing into a proper studio, a recording studio, and also a taping studio for me to be able to make self tapes.
Mhm.
I'm an actor and I have to get work, and when George Clooney wants to see an audition, and it's COVID and you can't go and do that someplace, you got to, I have speakers here, so I hire someone to be a reader, and it sounds like they're in the room, and it looks like I'm doing a scene. So yeah, and by virtue of building this space, I was able to record, probably 14 or 15 series over the last few
That
years
is
from
so
this
awesome.
space.
The kids, when they were young, I just wanted to be home with the kids, and
Yeah,
so
sure.
so my daughter, she is not phased at all about the thing I do. She's not the least bit impressed. So
Right. I have 4 kids. I know the drill, and being home is important. That's one of the reasons that the studio was super important as well, was, making sure that if I'm gonna be, doing recordings for 6, 7 hours, 8 hours a day, that, I could pop out and give them a squeeze, make them a quick sandwich or
yeah.
whatever it is,
Isn't that the
and pop
greatest
right
though?
back
Isn't
in.
that the greatest thing where you can actually be doing your thing, but it's all kind of there, and it kind of get
It's beyond a blessing, man. I mean, it really is. It's a pinch me kind of thing, because it really doesn't get much better. Although I will say that after doing that for a long time, for a couple of years,
you don't
I
mind
was
going
really
to a
ready.
set occasionally.
Oh, no, 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 not in the least bit. No, no, no. Let's go. Let's
How old are your kids?
14, 11, 5, and 2.
Oh, okay. So you got a good spectrum. Mine were
Yeah.
just all kind of packed in there. We
Yeah,
were
we had a couple of false starts there, and but yeah, no, it's lovely. There's sort of an act 1 and an act 2. The older 2 are good pals, and the younger 2 are good pals. So it's
Oh
nice.
yeah, my oldest two get along famously. The youngest one is just she is
Odd man out, huh?
she does her thing. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
But you're in LA right now, correct? That's where you live in?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, in Los Angeles, yep.
I also saw, and this was not a deep dive in your resume, but I did see my kids loved watching 24. I cannot for the
Mm.
life of me why I can't lock in and remember what you did on 24.
I was the chief of staff to Cherry Jones's president. It was in the
That's
the
right.
the
Yeah.
last
Okay.
season of 24, and I was instrumental in basically trying to bring it all down. I was a pretty hateful guy. Fun. That was a lot of fun to do, actually.
Seemed like a fun show to shoot, because of
It
just
was great. We had a ball.
so as far as what you're doing right now, what's kind of the mix kind of compared to on camera, film and TV to VO stuff you're doing for animation? Or by the way, do you also do video games? Have you found yourself in that realm?
Yeah, I just did a Star Wars video game. I do a little of everything. I do, Broadway and feature films and television and streaming and animation and commercials and endorsement and promos and the whole 9 yards. If I can add value and I have time, then I'll find a way to do it.
That's such a great way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, truly. And it's just a matter of it's really sort of what's out there, and it all sort of shifts. Sometimes it's very animation heavy. Sometimes it's, time is more spent doing work as a series regular on a show. Sometimes it all sort of takes a beat and there's not much happening. And it's time to sort of reflect on what I really want to be doing. I mean, I think, in all facets of life, control is an illusion. So the notion that I can control what comes to me in this chaotic and amorphous business that's a very special illusion. So I try to just not take myself too seriously, and I try to allow myself to be open. And oftentimes, the Sticky is a really great example. When I first saw the script, I thought it was great, but there was nothing in it for me. The character that I ended up playing was written just slightly differently, a little older, and I didn't see him as me. But when I read a second draft, I thought, oh, this is interesting. I want to be a part of this world, and maybe there's a world where that character adapts a little bit and I could play him. But then I realized they weren't interested in seeing me because they had an idea that was completely different. And so it took like a year and a half for me to finally say, hey, you guys really need to meet me on this. All right, we'll meet you. And they met me, and we all sort of clicked. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is right.
It's Blumhouse. This is more in the horror genre. Am I right? I'm looking at Blumhouse.
Yeah, so Blumhouse definitely made their name in the horror genre, but they go from horror into intriguing, into dramatic, and I think, look, Blumhouse is a fascinating and innovative studio, and it's Blumhouse through Jamie Lee Curtis, which is also just this extra beautiful little spice on this show. Not only is she in the show and she's terrific, but as a producer and as a voice on the show, she was instrumental in making sure that the vibe of this world that we haven't seen before, this criminal underbelly in northern Canada, this notion of maple syrup, these ne'er-do-wells, these buffoons, this insanity, that it all sort of comes together. And I think there's something really special about a show like this in a 30-minute format in 6 episodes. It gives us everything we want without feeling like we have to commit to something that's just going to take weeks and weeks and weeks to watch.
Did you tap into your Canadian roots with a little bit of Canadian dialect as a character?
No. If you see the show, you'll realize I'm actually playing an American on the show.
Okay.
So, yeah, not playing a Canadian on the show. I play a low-level mobster-esque guy who's, finds himself from the Boston area up in northern Canada collecting, the milk money for his employer. And Margo Martindale plays a local maple syrup farmer. And we realize in the show and from this show that in fact, in reality, there is an association, Maple Syrup Association, that controls the global supply and demand of maple syrup. And they store these giant vats and giant oil drums of maple syrup that are priced at thousands of dollars a drum in these warehouses that are largely unguarded. And so through desperation, greed, and just a general feeling of larceny, our characters get involved in this scheme to steal millions and millions of dollars worth of maple syrup and sell it on the black market.
You mentioned something that they come up with Blumhouse, like different ideas. And I like being pleasantly surprised by something like that. I haven't seen something like this before. That's always fun for me.
It'll be fun. I think you'll enjoy it.
As far as the Greek heritage, which, of course, me being a Jewish kid from Texas, for whatever reason in my family, for everybody's birthdays and events, we always went to Greek restaurants. So when
Great.
I think of my comfort food as a kid, it's always Greek food.
I love that. I love that. I think the Greeks, by and large, would feel happy to hear that statement because the Greeks all over the world just want to feed people.
Pure comfort. And I remember the guys in Dallas, it was Costas Cafe, the brothers, there was a guy, Zisi and
Love it.
Dimitri, they owned it. But it's all one big family. So every Greek restaurant in the Dallas area in one way or another, they're all
Love that.
related from what I
Love it.
understand. Are your folks kind of first generation in Canada,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
did
I spoke
or
I
have they
spoke
been
Greek
there?
in the house. It's my first language. My mother and father emigrated from Athens in the early 1970s. My dad went to Toronto, Canada, to study business and get his master's in business. And my folks were sticklers for us learning, proper, grammatically accurate Greek, both modern and ancient, actually.
Mhm.
They It was very, very important to them that we identified culturally as Greek, as well as embrace, living in Canada and being Canadian. And it was, I think, by virtue of speaking Greek first, that my ear was given the opportunity to train itself to recognizing different sounds, different timbres, different textures. And I think that's sort of where my mimicry and my understanding of tone and pitch and voice manipulation really sort of began.
I don't know any Greek at all except for what's on a
Sure.
menu. It was always great hearing the guys talk to one
Mm.
another. It always felt like even if they were arguing, it always felt festive. That's just the way it hit
Sure.
my ear. But I gotta know. I end up talking food at least once or twice. But I gotta know, did you inherit the recipes and the cooking vibe, or
Oh, yeah, my parents are both great cooks. Now, we weren't in the restaurant business. My dad actually ran a Greek radio station. He advertised for all the local companies, and he did a
really?
radio show. Beautiful voice, mellifluous voice. It's really where I probably got a lot of my vocal talent from. But my mother and father are great cooks. Very simple, what they call spitikofagito, which means like home cooked stuff. Nothing fancy, but
Mhm. Well, that's
oh
the
yeah,
best
everything
though.
delicious.
Yeah.
I mean, look, simple hand cut French fries in olive oil, a little bit of oregano and thick, coarse sea salt, lamb chops with just a squeeze of lemon, coarse black pepper, a perfect choriatiki salata, the village salad, which is just, vine ripe tomatoes, a nice healthy dose of olive oil, cucumbers, big kalamata olives, feta cheese, red onion. Fantastic.
They talk about the Mediterranean diet as being really good for you, but I used to, I'm trying to pick it back up down here, but grew all of my own herbs. That's one thing I got that from Greek cooking because there's always fresh
It
herbs.
makes a
And
difference.
that's really the kind of thing that
Yeah.
set it off. And one of my favorite things is avogalimono soup.
Apolemono. That means it's an egg lemon basically, where they beat the egg white
Oh,
into
it's so
lemon.
good.
It's delicious. We would have that when we were sick. It was the kind of thing that would nurse you back to health. It's sort of the Greek chicken soup.
Hey, it's Mark Preston, and I would like to tell you a little bit about one of our sponsors, X-Chair. Whether you're working from home or in the office, if you have a job or a task that has you sitting for a long period of time, this is the chair for you. Very comfortable, very customizable. They'll make it pretty much any way you want it. The look, the feel, the fabrics, everything. Plus, this is the kind of chair you can adjust to make it fit you just right. No matter your body type, it's spot on. I love my X-Chair. It has the Elemax cooling, heating, and massage technology. It is going to make your lower back feel so very good. Got to throw a little bit of love to X-Chair. It's the chair I'm sitting in every time I talk to a guest. So I've had a lot of time to have my tush in this chair, and the tush, the back, everybody's happy. Just go to storyandcraftpod.com/chair. Once again, X-Chair, check it out, storyandcraftpod.com/chair. Love my X-Chair. Your back will thank you. What about your wife's heritage? Is she by any chance Greek as well?
Well, she is now, but she was born and raised in Guilford, Connecticut. We met 22 years ago. She's a polyglot. She studied European history at Penn, and she speaks fluent Spanish and fluent German. And she took a course of modern Greek at Columbia while we were dating, and now she speaks fluent Greek.
Really? Wow.
Oh yeah, I married up, Mark. She's she converted to Greek Orthodoxy when we got married, and so we could raise our kids in the faith as well. And but she's as American as apple pie. Becky Newton, she's on a show right now called The Lincoln Lawyer, and she's about
Oh,
as good as
yeah.
someone can be on television.
That's one of the shows that's on the list. There's so much stuff
Yeah,
out there now. I got my little list of things that I want to see, and
sure.
it's definitely one of them. And I think, yeah, my kids always loved going in New Orleans. Every year they'd have the Greek Food Festival at the church, and my daughter loved the ice cream and with the baklava, and the kind of.
Hmm.
So you can tell I haven't had anything to eat today yet. So you're killing me over here. But
All right, man.
so when did the acting thing? When did all the creative stuff kick off for you? Was that kind of in high school? Was that already on the agenda, or did that come a little later?
No, Mark, I started acting. I've been acting for 40 years professionally. I started acting when I was 9 years old. I displayed an affinity and a proficiency with regard to performance and entertaining. And so my parents, despite their lack of knowledge within the field, decided that they should try and help nurture that talent. So they signed me up for a kids acting class on weekends, and an agent found me there, and I started doing some television work in Toronto. And shortly thereafter, I really started getting involved in music and singing and stage performing. And so I started auditioning for professional productions in Toronto, and then quickly started doing some big national tours in the States. And I landed on Broadway. I worked on Broadway for several years, and I met my wife while I was working on Broadway, but she was not working on Broadway. We met on the subway in the middle of rush hour.
Really?
And then
Well, when you met on the subway, did you both know what each other did, or was it just you had no clue about what?
no,
Oh,
we were kids. I was 25. She
uh,
was 21, straight out of college, and we just started chatting, and then we ended up moving to Los Angeles together and pursuing this career.
that is awesome. It's very symbiotic. That thing where y'all both could do your thing together. That's really wonderful. I mean, the fact that especially you being able to work at home, and she understands your workflow, and if you've had a not great day, creatively, or so it's probably like a lot of unspoken stuff. You can kind of read each other as creatives.
Sure.
Are any of your kids kind of aiming in this direction? You think, or are they like no?
It's hard to tell. They definitely. The great thing about kids is every day they discover something new, and then they allow you to discover something new about them, particularly at these ages. They are showing desire and skill in so many different facets. So it's really hard to say. I think, Becky and I will sort of nurture whatever direction they end up going. We have, both of us having been in this business as long as we have a healthy understanding of how challenging this can be. But, every business has its challenges. Every endeavor has its challenges. So as long as their heart's in it for the right reasons, and they go into it with a clear mind, I'm open to it.
Yeah, a lot of luck, and that your folks were at the outset very they're encouraging out of the gate. A lot of folks
Yeah.
have parents like, why are you doing this? Go get
Very
your
rare,
degree.
very rare for Greek immigrants to feel that way as well. They would have wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, but they were, to their credit, they were very, very, they were very open, which was terrific.
So how did you make that segue on stage to on camera? Was that something that was a seamless thing, or was that kind of your North Star? Was that ultimately where you were wanting to go, or it just kind of ended up that way?
So I always knew that I knew I wanted to perform and entertain. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a movie star. I didn't know what that meant. I just watched movies, and I knew how they made me feel. I'd go to the movies with my father, and I felt something. When you watch TV at home, it's just kind of meh. But when you go to the movie, there's something special. We're all in that room. It goes dark, and it's loud, and you're in the world, and you're in the story, and then the movie finishes, and there's so much to talk about, and how you felt, and then for weeks I'm play acting at what I saw, and I'm now that person, and that experience is just that's a holy experience.
Well, at that age though, when you were young and when your juices were flowing, what were you watching? What were the things that were like grabbing you, actors or films or directors?
Yeah, I was greatly inspired by the works of Danny Kaye, The Court Jester, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, Five Pennies. I loved Errol Flynn in The Adventures of Robin Hood. Obviously, anything Harrison Ford did. I remember seeing Roger Moore in Moonraker and thinking, "Wow, that I want to do that." But then I remember my father coming home with a beta tape of Amadeus, and he said, this isn't really a kid's movie, and he left it there. And the next night, my brother and I watched Amadeus, and I remember just thinking that F. Murray Abraham's performance was one of the greatest, most terrifying things I'd ever seen. So my inspirations were as varied as the roles that I've ended up playing. It's why I've never.
So F. Murray Abraham was the first to kind of get you feeling something, like there was a visceral reaction.
I mean, it was certainly from a massively dramatic standpoint, sure. But the inspirations came from so many different places and so many odd places. I mean, some of my one of my biggest influences were the Three Stooges. Their level of humor, their level of timing, and commitment to the bit, it was fantastic.
Well, that's a full arc of experience for you. I mean, did you have to chase that role to be, Mo? Did you chase that, or did they look at you going, "You're the guy. You're the guy"?
No. What do you think, Mark? You think I walked in and they looked at me and said, "You're the guy"?
I think you're talented enough. They might have been. No.
Took me about 6 months and about 14 auditions, a lot of begging and pleading, and there was no way that was going to happen, but somehow it did. I was an unknown actor at that point. The biggest thing I'd ever done was 24. And I certainly wasn't the lead of 24. I'd never done anything comedic, although I knew that I was I could work as a comedy actor. It just hadn't happened at that point. So it was a big leap of faith on the Farrelly brothers' part, a huge leap of faith on the studio part. That was when Tom Rothman was running Fox, and it was a confluence of my strange history with the Stooges, my encyclopedic knowledge of their shorts, and then my lack of guile and naivete to believe that they would allow me to pull a face and morph to play this role. And it ended up happening. And two other actors were offered the role. They fell out. One of them because he couldn't do the impression of Mo, and the other one because he wanted too much money.
I got to say, I remember growing up, like you said, the shorts, the ones that were just kind of in and out. It was just a few minutes. I like that. I thought there was something kind of cool about that.
Totally.
But I remember this kind of the rhythm, the physicality, really. And you nailed it. I mean, that was just
Appreciate that. Thanks. No, I mean, the thing about the Stooges that was fascinating was that they perfected their craft on the vaudeville circuit, in the Borscht Belt too. I mean, they did live performances for years and years and years and years and years before they ever put anything on celluloid. So the daunting task for us when we made the movie was we had 5 days of prep. There was no rehearsal. There was no,
Really?
Oh yeah, it was. We were shot out of a cannon, and so I again, through my own naivete, not knowing that this is what I wasn't supposed to do, I just took the bull by the horns, and Sean and Will and I would meet the morning before a shoot and talk about what we might do in a physical standpoint to supplement what it says in the script, the Stooges fight. What does that mean? What does that look like? And so we would create these bits and then show up on set ready to go. It was a remarkable experience.
Will Sasso he nailed it also. I mean, he's another guy that whenever I see him show up.
Great actor, good guy. Yeah.
It's interesting watching the physicality, because that's what I remember as a kid. I don't really remember plot lines as much. I just remember the seeming absurdity, but the heart in it, But
Sure.
I know some people are really, really, really into the Three Stooges, and it was an inspiration. But to be able to be in the movie, that had to have been a cool full circle thing for you.
Beyond, it really was. It was an earnest, literal dream come true.
You'd been on 24, so this is kind of like a 180-degree, shift. But did you kind of feel that was when the momentum just started kind of picking up for you? Do you think? Is that kind of when?
I don't think so. No. And it was funny. It was hard to bill me after that. I did it was a $50 million movie for Fox, and I was the lead of it. But I looked like Mo. I didn't look like this. And if you look at the posters or any of the trailers or any of it, it's not this guy. So how do they sell that? Right. So no, it wasn't necessarily one thing that it did do was it caught the attention of someone at Disney when they were looking to start a new show based on the original Walt Disney Mickey Mouse, where they wanted to go back to the root of what Mickey sounded like, which was Walt himself. And someone had seen me do the Stooges, and the Stooges had that intrinsic 30s era cadence to it, just by virtue of the ways that the Stooges talk. And so they wanted to bring me in to voice Mickey. And I was reticent at first because I have a deeper voice, and you don't mess with an icon like Mickey. But by sheer luck, Tom Hanks had been promoting his Finding Mr. Banks movie, And they had all of these Walt Disney documentaries on television at the time. And I watched a particular documentary where it showed Disney talking to a journalist, and his voice was very similar to mine. He had there was a bass to his voice, but where his voice resonated, aside from his regionalism, was similar, and I found that intriguing. And so I watched him as he talked, and then the journalist asked him, "Would you do it, Mr. Disney? Would you do a little of the voice?" And he went, "Oh boy!" And he sort of, and I watched what he did with his body. I watched what he did with his face, and I saw where his larynx went, and I thought, "Oh gosh, maybe I can do that." And so, I went in and I gave it the old college try, and I mean that was a shift in my life that I would never have expected. That is really just a beautiful blessing in my life. Voicing Mickey Mouse.
Now, you mentioned the thing about like the 30s. I always wondered as a VO guy, how much of that was affected, or how much of that's the way people spoke back then. I can't get in a time machine and go hear it. Kind of like the news people. They talk like that. If is that an affected thing that they did, or if that was just part of
It's
the
a
way
great
people
question,
talk,
right? I mean, it's like how much of what they showed us of anything was affected. How many people slept in twin beds in full nighties and buttoned up pajamas? Do you know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
who knows what it was really like back then? I did The Boys in the Boat with George Clooney last year, and that was a 30s period piece, and threading that needle. And I played a journalist, actually, and a radio announcer, and a fellow who was announcing the races. So finding the right balance of what would have been reasonable back then and also what would work cinematically for today, that was fun. Finding that with George, how far do you want to go into, the year was 1935, you know what I mean? How far do you want to go into that
Right.
to thread that balance?
He directed it, correct?
He did.
Thank you for reminding me, because I wanted to ask you about that. It's a true story, correct?
It is. It's a beautiful. If you haven't read the book, I would say you should put that on your list. It's a beautifully written book.
Okay, read the book first before
I
seeing
mean,
the movie.
it's not necessary. It's not necessary, but it's such an homage to America. It's such a love letter to what this country is really about. To the 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 pain and struggle resulting in an exaltation of the American spirit. It's a
Mhm.
really beautiful homage to what it means to be American. It's lovely. I absolutely
It
love
would
it.
be nice if something old was new again right now. Bring some of that vibe back would be
Sure.
glorious right now. So as you're progressing, were you thinking, okay, I'm doing this? You work at George Clooney, and I hear, I love everything he does. In fact, when I coach voiceover students, I always mention the thing I love about him is we talk about brand and who you are, your signature. We think of Danny Ocean, suave, debonair, modern day Cary Grant, But the things he's really notable for, are that he's a total dolt, like in the Coen Brothers movies, or when he steps outside of being a handsome, charismatic dude.
Absolutely.
That had to have been a great experience.
It was remarkable. It was remarkable watching him work, listening to him, seeing how confident he was with regard to having already sort of seen how he wants the story to unfold on screen. It gave the actors a tremendous sense of peace showing up on set, knowing that he's got the reins. And just a lovely guy, just top to bottom.
How does he direct? Because I know, like, Clint Eastwood's very, as they say, kind of directs in the camera. He's like, he gets a scene done, moving on. What's George Clooney as far as?
I mean, he's very casual, very much in favor of the actors. He loves actors. He is an actor. I never felt like we were chasing the clock, like we were in trouble for time. It never felt like we were belaboring something and doing multiple takes when they were unnecessary. It also didn't feel like he was doing prototypical wide, medium, close. He knew how a scene was going to play. If the whole thing was going to play in the close, he would eschew the wide and say, I don't need it. I know I'm going to come right in here. So there was something really beautiful about that. He was really a mentor to me during those several weeks in London. And I asked him a lot of just, business questions, and he was always ready with a story. But one of the things that stuck with me, one of the things that he said to me that I found very profound and very liberating, was that when you're an actor and you're auditioning, you're playing with house money. The casino's giving you $10,000 and they say, do with it what you will. Now, you may lose it, but you're not losing anything. They gave you the $10,000. Who cares? You may turn it into 20 and you could turn it into $1 million. And that's what an audition is. You've got nothing to lose. So go for it. And I thought that was very simple but very profound. And it's definitely indicative of his casual but, hardworking nature, right?
Yeah, I think that's the hard thing to do as an actor. And like I said, I work with voiceover folks, and I'm like, go in there, do your thing. Just you don't know what they're looking for, and it's a fool's errand to kind of assume, But you try to get down the middle. But did you audition for George, or is it like, okay, it was just kind of like, okay, you're the guy. That
No,
works.
Mark, I love the notion that you think that it ever happens where someone says you're the guy. I'm sure that a lot
I
of
think
actors,
you are that talented. I've seen you do your thing. If I saw, he's like, I know he could do that thing. I want him.
I don't think it's ever happened for me in life that someone went, "You're the guy." No, I made a tape actually in this studio for that role, and look, to his credit, he watched the tape and then he gave me the role. There wasn't anything fussy about George. A lot of directors will see a tape and then decide that they want to meet with you on Zoom or read again or give you notes. For George, I think I would venture to say that every aspect of his life is this way. He's decisive. That's the guy. Call him, tell him he got the part.
Now, is his directing style verbose, giving you lots of explanations, or is he very pithy with just a few words just to get you there?
It's interesting. I found him. You mentioned the word chameleon early on in this interview, and I think George is a chameleon in some ways as well. And his directorial style, I think, has a chameleonic essence to it, because there would be some big boisterous scenes where there are hundreds and hundreds of extras outside, and he would use his megaphone and use humor to motivate and direct. And then there were some really intimate sequences where he would ask the crew to politely, pleasantly, almost not even have to, but the crew would recognize that they would need to sort of bring it all down as they were setting up. And he would sort of come quietly next to the actor. And I remember him doing this with me and sitting with me and, just like, what do you think, Chris? You want to sort of just like jump into it, or just very like a paternal, like, take your time, pal. We can do this any way you want. Like almost an arm around the shoulder and an I believe in you sort of thing that it just took all insecurity and evaporated and just allowed me to just be. I joked with my wife. I was like, she's like, how was it? I was like, I just wanted him to put his arm around me and say, I got you, son. just a really, really, look, man, they say don't meet your heroes. Well, if your hero is George Clooney, meet him, because he's not going to let you down.
Yeah, I can imagine being in a room with him and Brad Pitt. I don't think you can go in there. There's too much charisma.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, no, and they also, I haven't met Brad, but they seem like good dudes too. That's the other part. So there's all that charisma, there's all that handsomeness, there's all the talent, experience, but then add to that they seem like good-natured fellows. Yeah, it'd be too much for a mere mortal.
Well, he said, well, I think you hold your own very well in
cheers.
The stuff I've seen you, without a doubt. I mean, you and in the Red Notice, or in Red Notice, without you, that the scene wouldn't have been as electric, because you've got Ryan Reynolds, he's an okay looking guy, I guess. And you've got the physicality of Dwayne Johnson, but without you, it didn't really have that tension,
Cheers,
and I love watching people who don't have dialogue, but you love watching. You just like, okay, you kind of lean in, okay, what's going to happen? And I think they did a really wonderful thing, shooting you from behind without even showing your face for a good moment to moment. It's like, okay, what's going on? And it kind of built up the tension. So mazel tov on you.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. I really appreciate it. I love making that.
Now, you talk about George Clooney, talking about on the menu of guys and gals you'd like to work with. Is there a director? Is there a type of film, a type of project that's been itching, and like, okay, this is where I need to add this to the recipe of my career?
That's a great question. I mean, look, I love all of Paul Thomas Anderson's films, so a chance to work with Paul Thomas Anderson would be a real dream come true.
Well, you know who his dad is, right?
I know who his dad is. Yeah, I know who his dad is, and I know who his wife is. I've worked with his wife on a few projects. Maya and I have done a few things together. No, I know all about him. I've been a distant student of his, if you will. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. His dad has the greatest outtake reel. It's 11 minutes of
yes. I know what you're talking about. Actually, I have seen this. Yeah.
Well, I remember hearing it. My voiceover coach back in 1990, or 92, he said, just go listen to this. It's 11 minutes. And he was the voice of some different TV stations. Just the video he did when he was the voice of America's Funniest Home and
Yep.
ABC,
Yep.
he used the Sennheiser 416
Yep.
because he wanted to sit in the booth with. And this the banter, it's like anybody who does voice or any kind of creative thing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing a story that one time for Paul Thomas Anderson, for this, I think he had other kids, for Christmas, he wanted them to have snow because he was, I think, originally from Cleveland or something. And being in Hollywood, he actually paid to have snow machines brought and overnight cranking out snow. So when the kids woke up Christmas morning, they had snow on their front yard, courtesy of a movie studio snow machine or something.
That's pretty cool.
That's lore.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
But besides Paul Thomas Anderson, who else is kind of on your Mount Rushmore, if you will?
Did you watch Shogun? That was really, really beautifully done. And there's a director that won the Emmy this year for his work on that show called Frederick Eo Toy. And he and I have actually worked together before on a couple of things. But he's the kind of guy that I love on a TV set as a director. This is a guy with a specific vision and such a calm and quiet way of leading with that vision. It's guys like that I want to work with. There's a show. Have you watched the show Slow Horses with Gary Oldman recently? That's an Apple TV show.
It's one of those, yes and no. I started watching and I was working on the computer. I was sitting in my sofa. I was like, this is one of the shows I need to pay attention to totally. I can't like half pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to pay attention. You got to pay attention to that one for sure. But it's a brilliant show, and that's the kind of material that I would absolutely love to.
You talk about George Clooney directing, but what about you directing? Have you thought about, okay, this is a muscle I haven't flexed yet that I want to try it out and see how it works?
Yeah, I have, definitely. And Stooges was sort of the first time that came onto my radar. My involvement in that movie was much more than just acting as Mo. Because of my knowledge of the Stooges and my understanding intrinsically of what the task was, I got my first taste of what it might be like if I were to direct something that I really believed in, and I think that's really what it's going to take. I think I'm going to need to find a story that I think is the most compelling story that needs to be told, and then I'm going to have to tell it.
Well, you had your wife. Is she write at all?
We both do. Yeah, we both write, and it's one of those things where we're not in any rush. We're still so beautifully motivated by the work that comes to us by virtue of other, gifted screenwriters and producers, that we're happy doing that work right now. And I feel like in every aspect of my life, like when I transitioned from the theater into television, and then when film found me, and then when animation found me, it was all rather organic. So I feel like the next step with directing will probably also follow in that path.
Because it sounds like you've kind of been more surfing, kind of taking it as the wave moves, and you kind of have done a remarkably wonderful job writing it. Because I didn't realize how deep your resume was and the diversity of stuff, and you can't, you got to be one hell of a talented guy to ride that wave. So good on you, my friend. Now, as we kind of wrap up here, I throw my 7 questions out, always a little bit extra fun. First one of my favorite, I'm a food nerd, and we discussed it, but I got to know, what is your favorite comfort food? Being a Greek guy.
Yeah, it might surprise you. My favorite comfort food is 2-inch thick bone-in ribeye, a grass-fed bone-in ribeye. Yeah, I would reverse sear it. I'd put it in a small oven at maybe 300 for 8 minutes, and then iron skillet, big pat of raw butter, and just sear minute, and then maybe 30 seconds.
Throw some rosemary on top or something.
Yeah, depending on how I'm going to do it, right? I'm not sure if I would, but the actual comfort food would be just that. If I was going to have it with some of my hand-cut fries, then I might do rosemary. I might actually do a little oregano to take it into the Greek place.
Yeah.
If I was going to eat it later, I would slice it up, squeeze some lemon, a drizzle of olive oil, and that gives it a different sort of vibe. But that would be my comfort food for sure.
I have to ask, you're Greek. You know your food. You come from a place of a family that knows up from down. I got to know, what are your feeling on dolmas? Because when I grew up, they were the big, warm. They're just delicious. But when I moved to New Orleans, whereas for about 20 years, they had the small little oily ones, the little tiny
oily ones. Yeah.
I like, what is your preference? What is considered authentic
I mean, look, dolmades change the size and whether they're served cold or served warm, room temp, based on the region, right? So in the north, where my mother's family is from, they tend to be more in the way that you like them. I was never the biggest dolmada fan. I think when I was a kid, the idea of the stuffed grape leaf was just not my thing. I like the stuffed peppers. They're called yemista, where you take a pepper, you hollow it out, and you put the rice and the
Really? Oh, I've
onions
never
and
heard of
garlic in
this.
there. Oh yeah, you have to have that. Next time you go to a Greek restaurant, you ask them for yemista, stuffed peppers. They're delicious.
That in Indian food, I've never mastered the seasoning ratios. It's one of the few foods I really have to look at a recipe to get it. It's just, but it's the grandmothers that make it a little of this, a little of that, but I haven't quite mastered that.
Yeah, I think for you to enjoy it best, you go to a restaurant, Mark. I don't want you cooking your street food. Bad things can happen.
I do. I tell you,
You're not giving me the confidence of someone that's going to deliver an authentic Greek dish. Mark.
I will
hate to
say
break
y'all
it to you.
mastered lamb, bar none. Now, the next question I got for you,
There you go.
3 people, let's say you're going to sit down with. You have a few hours, talk story, living or not. Who are those 3 people you would love to sit down with?
Marcus Aurelius, Frank Sinatra, and Jesus Christ.
Very cool. Jesus has come up a few times. Never Sinatra. Marcus Aurelius. Actually, I was watching Paul Giamatti in the film he was in. He played a college professor. Came out in the last couple of years.
The holdover.
Yeah. And he talked about the book Meditations. And love all the quotes. I actually just ordered the book, sitting on my nightstand. I need to read that.
And it's funny, it's sitting on your nightstand, but that's what it was intended to be. It was never meant to be a book. That was Marcus Aurelius's nightstand journal. He wrote his ideas and thoughts. It was literally, I got to get apples tomorrow morning. Remember not to be rude to the shopkeeper. It was like little things to himself. Now, they get more involved as you go through, and you realize this is a brilliant mind at work. This is a mind that really had something to say, but he never intended.
Do you have a
for us
quote
to
that
read.
sticks out in your mind that is sort of that resonates, that you hold on to?
Well, I mean, it's I'm diverging from it, and Churchill certainly used a version of it as well. But the obstacle is the way, right? You know what I mean? Whatever the obstruction is, actually ends up being the way. That's the very definition of for me of being an actor, right? It's like, here's this thing. Oh no, this isn't going to happen, or they need this, and you can't do that. And all right, well, it's really it's the art of living a judo lifestyle, where you take the thing that's not working and you just sort of make it not only
use
work,
the
but
energy
make
to
it
your
perfect.
advantage. Yeah, my grandfather always, that was his
That's
nickname
it.
for me, Marcus Aurelius. So I've always been kind of aware of quotes over the years since I was a little kid.
Philosophically inclined.
That's what I
Great.
try to be. But as a kid, next question, who was your first celebrity crush?
Alyssa Milano, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, she was on Who's the Boss. She was Samantha. She was the cutest thing I'd ever seen. Yeah, she was maybe a year older than me. Maybe a little more. I don't know exactly, but I remember. So she would be my first crush. But I think the first time I was ever aware of like Va Va Voom was Moonraker.
Oh yeah,
I forget who. Yeah,
I remember a kid I
play
went
it.
to elementary school with. There was one guy had like gold or metal teeth or something, and the kid said, "I don't want to brush my
Jaws,
teeth
yeah.
because I want to get all fillings so I can make my mouth look like him." So he just eats sugary stuff all the time. That's one thing I remember about Moonraker for whatever reason. Things, it's like people I forget about until I'm in an interview. I'm like, oh yeah, that kid. Wonder how his teeth are doing. But the next question I got for you: if you're going to be on an exotic island, you got a year. It's a beautiful place. You want to be there, but it doesn't have streaming. But you're going to bring one DVD. A movie you can watch over and over, and a CD, or you can say a box set if you'd like. Musically, theatrically, you got just one thing each you got to stick with the whole year. What would those things be?
So the movie would be Casino Royale.
Which version of
The
it?
box set would be
The Daniel Craig version or the original?
The
Okay.
Daniel Craig. Not Mark. No one likes the original. Come on, Mark. Mark, get it together, man. For the love of God. Yeah, no. It's,
but I
it's
heard somewhere
Daniel
you can do a good Sean Connery, though.
The quest for the Grail is not archaeology. It's a race against evil. If the Nazis recover the Grail, and the armies of darkness will march all over the earth forever. This is an obsession. I never understood it. Never. Neither did Mom. Oh, yes, she did. Only too well. Till she kept her illness from me, and all I could do was mourn her.
Okay.
I got to do the golf clap. You got to get the golf clap on that, man. Awesome.
Right.
That's wonderful.
I don't know that either. Let's see. And then the record would be Sinatra Come Fly With Me.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Now, from stem to stern, beginning to end, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep at night, what are the component parts for you of a perfect day?
Okay, the component parts for me of a perfect day. All right. I would say waking up without someone needing me desperately to do something immediately. No children in any sense of distress needing something. So I wake up and, well, no one needs me. That's pretty cool. I get to sit out on the deck and get a little morning sun and maybe have a cup of coffee peacefully and quietly. Then I get to come downstairs and make everyone breakfast, including myself. That's fun, and the chaos and the craziness can ensue. I'm able to take the dog, and my wife and I take the dog for a stroll, and we just sort of catch up on on what we might have missed over the course of the days that we might have been working. We plan out what we're going to make for dinner. I take a brief sojourn to come to my studio and record a fun little bit of animation. I have to finish up quickly because I have to run to Culver Studios to do a reshoot on one scene for a movie that I'm super excited about that's coming out, but it's only going to take a couple hours. And it's perfect because on my way home from Culver, I can stop at the market and pick up the perfect ribeye and some nice little tidbits for a little crudité and a little salad. Come home. Kids tell me school was great. The fire's roaring. We've just gotten the little ones to sleep. I make a beautiful dinner. We sit, we eat, and then we all chill out watching Survivor or Shark Tank. There's a perfect
Very
day.
good, very good, my friend. Last question I got for you. 16-year-old you're going to jump in the DeLorean, go see him. Piece of advice to either make that moment a little bit better or put you on a different trajectory. What's the piece of advice to 16-year-old you?
Stop asking if they like you. It doesn't matter either way. And if you ask and get the honest answer, you're really going to be disappointed with that answer. So just carry on.
Awesome, my friend. Thank you so much. You've been generous with your time. Go have a great weekend, and hopefully
Thanks,
we'll catch
Mark.
up down the line.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your time and your generosity.
Okay, there you go. Chris Diamantopoulos. What a cool dude. Stage, TV, film, voiceover. He is doing it all. Like I mentioned, he is kind of a chameleon. You know, he does things from being the bad guy in the movie Red Notice to being Mickey Mouse. Really enjoyed sitting down with him, and I appreciate you stopping by to check it out. Again, the new show on Prime Video is called The Sticky. It is funny, really cool, something kind of different. I enjoyed a few episodes over the weekend, and this week I'm going to finish up the series, so check it out. Good stuff. Hey, do me a favor, as I always ask you, if you would, a little love, pop on over to storyandcraftpod.com/rate. That's storyandcraftpod.com/rate. Just go ahead and leave a review. Drop some stars, if you will. It's a great way for people to find Story and Craft. And, of course, when you're on the website, you can find out everything you could possibly want to know about the show, past guests, past episodes. It's all right there, storyandcraftpod.com. And, of course, don't forget to like and follow Story and Craft. That way you get notified every time a new episode comes out. Okay, so I'm going to jump on out of here. Again, I so appreciate you making whatever I got going on part of what you've got going on. No matter what you're doing, exercising, walking the dog, or maybe, kind of what I enjoy doing, listening to podcasts in the car whenever I'm driving about. So thank you again. Going to be back in a few days. Another fun episode for you right here on Story and Craft.
That's it for this episode of Story and Craft. Join Mark next week for more conversation right here on Story and Craft. Story and Craft is a presentation of Mark Preston Productions, LLC. Executive producer is Mark Preston. Associate producer is Zachary Holden. Please rate and review Story and Craft on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can subscribe to show updates and stay in the know. Just head to storyandcraftpod.com and sign up for the newsletter. I'm Emma Dillon. See you next time, and remember, keep telling your story.